Hey there. Happy Tuesday. It's me, Sarah Force. I just felt called and guided to share a few things. Um, I just gotten to the point where it's like I can no longer just allow the truth to be housed in my body. I need to speak on it, things that are important to me. These, of course, are my views and my opinions. You can choose to agree or disagree. It doesn't really matter. Whoever's meant to see this and watch this will, and whoever doesn't want to, that's totally fine. So, anyway, I hope y'all are having a great week. It's been pretty crazy since the eclipse. Lots of changes, lots of purging, um, lots of ups and downs. I feel like with everybody, lots of life altering things going on and happening. Eclipse seasons are always intense. I know particularly from my own experience when Scarlett was a baby, 2017, and started having her seizures. Uh, it was in between an eclipse season. It was April eclipses, I believe, and April was her first seizure after vaccinations, and then her last seizure. She had three after those things. And then I think the 9 month interval, somewhere around then, it was August of 2017, we were in the hospital. It was, like the longest one. It's when we got her diagnosis. I actually had to go to work throughout the whole process, which was right down the road. It was on Locust in St. Louis at the time. So anyway, I remember eclipse season, like from that moment, I realized the importance and the potential for change. It all pushes things forward, right? But like, yeah, lots of change during eclipse season. So I hope you guys are doing good. Um, I'm going to be kind of all over the place because I have multiple things to talk about. Um, the first thing is just kind of the medical industry and the loops that get perpetuated. It's just kind of a thing that I noticed. So, um, this is my metaphor basically. So, do you know how these brand name companies will get you to think that their brand is cool, whatever. And you pay $50 for a t-shirt. I think that's on a Macklemore song. But anyway, you pay $50 for a t-shirt. It's just a t-shirt with a logo on it. Well, then all of a sudden you become a walking advertisement for this company. And depending on, people around you, if they think you're cool or not, or whatever, will want to do what you do. And therefore, everyone's buying $50 t-shirts. This is kind of like, how this little circle gets started. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with name brands or buying $50 t-shirts. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying like it's a bit of a ruse because, then we're spending all our hard-earned money on, a special t-shirt because it has a logo on it. So how this links to the medical community, just in my dot connecting a little bit is the foundations for some of these illnesses, diseases, things of that nature. I'm not going to name any of them, but what they are. They're plastered all over. Milk cartons. They're signs for our Facebook profile pictures. This foundation, that foundation, or whatever. Um, I'm not talking about the grassroots foundations. I'm talking about, the medical ones. And I do genuinely believe that there are some well-intentioned people out there that think by putting their money, energy, and effort into these things that they're actually doing something. If it makes you feel good, it makes you feel good. That's whatever. But at the end of the day, when you learn and you do the research on a lot of these foundations, yeah, they're always like, search for a cure, search for a cure. Well, they cycle this money that they get. And does it go for research? Yeah, I'm sure it does. A lot of it's bullshit research. The peer reviewed studies are made up. they hand pick and stuff and, put stuff in there that's not, that sounds good, basically. A lot of people don't even read the peer-reviewed studies anyway, but for those that do, they think that those are actual, based on fact. And a lot of times the studies are done to support the outcome that they want, if that makes any sense. So, by doing the marathons, asking for the donations for people's birthdays, wearing the t-shirts and all of that stuff, you're pouring your energy and giving your life force energy into a loop, a system that has they don't have they don't have the agenda for a cure. And if they do, it's going to be at your expense. You know what I'm saying? Like they'll say, well, okay, this is the new cure. This is the new study. This is the new medical device we want to implant into you, or whatever, because those things are real. They're not necessarily good for you. I'm not a doctor. I'm not claiming to be. I say this in every episode. These are just my opinions. These are just my viewpoints. Just some things that I've noticed is all. And then like I had said, the more money and energy we pour into these systems, the more we're stuck at the mercy of their wishes, and I'm not saying that, these diseases and illnesses aren't real. People have gone through a lot of hardships in the medical, just medically, right? Yeah, it's just I have to speak on some of this stuff sometimes because I feel a fire within my veins and I want to speak on stuff. I've had my own, obviously, issues with sometimes medical community and things. Not everyone is there for your best interest. They're all trained a certain way. Doctors don't even really study nutrition, which is crazy to me. Or, the meridians or certain ways that the body work or the fascia, there's a lot out there. And I'm glad that finally with functional and holistic health and sound healing, light therapy, and then just getting back to basics, like exercise and grounding and things like that, spirit and science, and spirituality can bridge the gap, work on the body as a whole, and not to mention our emotions and trauma. And oh my goodness, I mean, like you could go on and on and on, right? That all plays a role. I actually had a doctor that was supposed to tie my tubes after I had scarlet. It was in my, awareness that that's what we were doing. We were tying my tubes. So, staple, clipping, tying, this doctor told me, don't you worry, you won't get pregnant. If you get pregnant, I'll pay your child support. Ha ha, funny. I got the procedure done, and I healed, had a few women's issues later, and was curious. I never looked at my doctor's notes. So I contacted, the doctor's office. That doctor no longer practices, and found out that this doctor actually removed my fallopian tubes. I had no idea, they say medical malpractice is a giant thing. I mean, it makes sense. Direct communication is important. I never consented to this. In the actual documents, it states that I consented to have this procedure done after sedation, before rolling me after sedation, before rolling me into surgery. Did I know? Was there clear communication? No. It's very important that we advocate for ourselves. I felt violated. That is a direct violation of my human person. it wasn't informed consent. It wasn't even really consent because I was under the assumption that we were tying or stapling, he got more money this way, or the insurance or whatever, this procedure. Obviously, you're taking out someone's organs as opposed to just tying. You're going to make more money this way, right? Just a lesson for me. I've had many in the medical stuff, but this is my little black kitty Minerva. She wants to come and say hi. She's a wild one. She's a wild one, and she plays fetch. um, what else did I want to discuss? Okay, so when we went on vacation most recently to Branson, we went and saw some penguins, and I noticed a sign, and it really caught my eye. I didn't know this about penguins. I think a lot of birds do this, but on the sign, they called it the catastrophic penguin molt. What happens is with these penguins is that I think I could be wrong, but I think it's once a year they literally molt all their feathers. It's a very painful process. They don't have them for a month. They can't hunt or fish or swim. I believe they might be able to swim, but I don't think they can hunt or do anything, serious, while they're going through this process, and then their feathers grow back. Dravet syndrome, the syndrome that Scarlett has been diagnosed with, is also, if you Google it, they label it as a catastrophic seizure disorder. I had the download years ago that seizures on a 3D level are seizures, and they're scary and they're a medical thing and everything. But on a more energetic, higher 5D perspective, it is a purge. It's your body purging, transforming, almost like a molt, like a spider, like tarantulas molt, turtles molt, snakes shed their skin, getting rid of what's no longer needed in the body, heavy metals, toxins, parasites, poisons, because there are poisonous things in our environments, and a lot of people are sensitive. We're humans and we're sensitive to these things. So it's just another way to view seizures. If you go the functional route, they'll tell you that seizures are a symptom. They are a symptom of something going on in the environment or in the body that isn't aligning or balancing within the body. Therefore, they have a seizure. It's not all necessarily just a brain dysfunction. It all starts here. It's a full body thing. Is seizure brain related? Of course. They don't really have a full scope of the entirety of what happens in the body, in my opinion. I just thought that was interesting. It literally correlated the download I had years ago. What they say this syndrome is, how they explain it, and then I saw it for myself, with this little sign about the penguins and stuff, and I was like, it just gives you a little bit more perspective, a different perspective, something to think about, something to chew on. I wanted to discuss caretaker guilt. It is a real thing. A lot of mamas, especially with vaccine injured children, medically fragile children, special needs children, they are on call. They are on duty. Some have no support. Some have very little support. Some may have a lot of support and still feel, overburdened, stressed out frequently. And sometimes that can arrive as a guilt, a guilt that you're not doing enough for your child. Maybe you should be doing something differently. They should live life this way, or Um, or when you decide to do stuff for yourself, you feel bad because you can't take them with you. But it's a false thing. It's absolutely necessary to take care of yourself when you are 24/7 taking care of another one. I homeschool Scarlett. I take care of Scarlett. We cook with her. We do everything with her. She is here. I don't trust another person on a full-term basis, like sending her to public school, to look out for her well-being like we do. She's in her safe environment here at the house. It's not just about seizures. She's also loved and supported and cared for. I do know that there are children, with medically fragile things that do go to public school, and sometimes they do find the appropriate and supportive teachers and aides and stuff to help them. And, God bless those people doing those things. Sometimes it doesn't look like that. Sometimes, these kids are being abused or not taken care of or not watched over thoroughly or not taught properly, not taught at their level or where they're at, So it's a big job. I don't get paid for it. Um, if I was to do all of these things for someone else's child or out in the wild, I would. Mothers and mothers run the world. They just do. Mothers run the world. I'm not saying that dads aren't important, but we're raising the next generation. Fathers are very important. Mothers give that nurturing, that soft spot, that care, that children need. And a lot of times, we've been disconnected from that because we're just pushing, we're just going, we're just constantly earning and consuming. And our children need us. It's important. They need us. Therefore, we need to take care of ourselves to the best of our ability. Do what lights us up, gives us joy, take time for ourselves. This is me even talking to myself. I have to remind myself, go on my walk, go ground, go get some sunshine, journal, talk to people whom I love, go do something fun. Just doing things like that help me feel better. It feels like I am pouring back into my cup, because being in the same four walls or whatever all the time can be weary. We just recently, I'm sorry, I need a drink. We just recently went to a local balloon glow where they did hot air balloons. They did tethered rides. We were trying to wait, but it was so hot. So maybe another year. I was just so excited to see them. I've been wanting to see them forever and I haven't. I literally had tears of joy because, I was pouring into my own cup and doing for me. And do I wish Scarlett could have been there? Yeah, but it was far too hot, So um it was nice. It was a good experience. So I'm grateful that I got to do it. And it was nice to hang out with my older child and her husband, my son-in-law. We had a good time. Um we are seeing a new functional practitioner. She's actually our neighbor and lives right down the road, and she's a very lovely woman. I'm just so grateful for the people over the years. There's been quite a few that have lent their hand on our journey. I hope to, refer business to these people. Once we get our foundation going and stuff. These are people that don't always think in the traditional sense. Traditional, new doors are being opened, and I want to share that with other people, whether that's functional and holistic, sound healing. We've done acupuncture. I've seen or I've spoken with multiple spiritual guides that you know, that I trust, that have helped me along this journey, and obviously, my faith and my hope and my resilience, in connection to God and our path has been very important. I wouldn't have been able to do this without, the support that I've received. So I'm very grateful. We're just getting back on track. There's been a bit of an uptick, which is common, because we're weaning the last med that's actually, like, if you Google, these benzos, these medications, they can actually, after a while, your brain and body get used to them, and they can have the adverse effect. So instead of, sedating and preventing things, it can actually cause them, because like the body's like, where's this thing that I'm used to? I need more, it's easy to see how people can get addicted to these things. So, and her body's purging. She's purging, some heavy metals. We plan to do another parasite cleanse, all in due time, though. We can't do it all at one time. It's too much. It's too much for the body. So right now we are getting the support that we need for her body as we, slowly wean this medication. So that's what we're doing. I'm I know a lot of people are fired up and stuff about the whole Fauci thing. It lit a fire under my ass a little bit too, just because it's bullshit. Um, but I'm glad that it's coming out. We can't get through these things. We can't see how the world works unless we actually see it with our own eyes. And we're getting to witness with our own eyes what has been going on, how the world works, who some of these dark players are, who they're puppeted by. So we can choose for ourselves what makes sense for us, that's the most important thing, having self-sovereignty and deciding for ourselves what works best for us and our family. Even Trump making, the executive order to lessen or spread out and space the childhood vaccines. For those that still get vaccines, I'm sure this will be a smidge of relief. For those that know about the stuff, they just won't participate anymore. You will never go back. Once you see, once you research, once you study, you will never go back. But to each their own. I just think that it's important that this stuff is coming out so more people can see it for themselves and then use that knowledge, for their best interests. When I look back now on, the jabs, there's many injuries I've seen in my life that I didn't connect the dots until later. I was just going to share a few. Obviously, Scarlett, I've explained that before, right after her 3 month, 6 month, and 9 month, it was prolonged seizures. Yes, her daddy has epilepsy. Yes, genetics can get switched on with the jabs. Mutagenesis, I'm sorry, is an actual thing. It's in vaccine inserts, and it literally means, mutating your genetics. I mean, why else would you need aborted, baby parts? Why else would you need monkey and insect parts and bovine parts? And we're mixing animals with us. We don't know. It's mad scientist stuff. It really is. Unfortunately, they don't call it pharmakia for nothing. The dark spells are put in the medications. They even sound like a spell. The medication names themselves. I've seen memes before, and I'm like, yep. It's not, I don't want to cause fear. It's just knowledge, knowledge is power. We get to choose what we do with it. So many people have one foot in the door and one foot in the other. And, that's perfectly okay. We're all learning. We're all on this journey together. We've been told things that are incorrect this entire time. So yeah, Scarlett, I remember when I was pregnant with my first daughter, I was 19. They told me to get a flu shot, and I did. And I was probably the sickest I have ever been for 2 weeks. It was horrible. I was miserable, highest fever I've ever ran. And I was pregnant on top of that. And I wasn't supposed to take anything. I went to, I went to the hospital. Sorry, there's nothing we can do for you. You're pregnant. I think maybe they gave me some, I think they gave me some, IV fluids, like they typically do. Um, and I just had to suffer through it. And then I was well again after those 2 weeks. And then for whatever reason, I got sick again, almost as sick as the first time for another 2 weeks. So it was like an entire month after I had gotten this thing that I was sick as a dog. And I vowed from that point forward, I would never get that one. So, um, I used to work with this guy. I was actually friends with him. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to name any names, but he went and got something. I believe it might have been that one. It might have been another one. And he came to work and he had half facial droop. He had what do they call it? Bell's palsy. I now know, he'd even said he just went and got this thing. It affected his face, it affected his health. And it was right there in front of you. But nobody really knew about these things or at least talked about them back then. This was in the early 2000s. So um, my oldest children, they got their things, sweet baby, sweet baby. My daughter constantly, my oldest daughter, she constantly had tonsillitis. I just don't think it was normal. I don't think it was natural, honestly. She constantly had tonsillitis, like a couple times a year sometimes, and you would look in her throat and her throat would look like ground up hamburger meat. Like I'd never seen anything like it. My son was really sensitive. He had to get breathing treatments. They say that asthma and all these things are normal. You don't really know until you start researching these things at how they affect things. He was allergic to pollen severely. His eyes would swell shut. Him just running through the grass in the spring, he would just puff up all over and get hives. Um, just looking back at, just looking back at these things, I, can really connect the dots. I can't sit here, and say that I think it was the cause of everything, but I 100% believe that if they wouldn't have gotten any of these things, they would have been far healthier. Far healthier. That's all I'm going to say. Um, oh, and then there was one other thing I was going to mention about this. So my grandmother was kind enough to make me a scrapbook. And in this scrapbook, she left me birth certificates of family, which I'm grateful for because then I can go back and look at my heritage, right? Like her mom was born in England. That was cool to know. Not only that, I'm into astrology. Therefore, I've got their birth dates and times and place. And I can learn my parents and grandparents and some of my relatives' astrology, which is kind of interesting. She saved all kinds of stuff. Anyway, she actually saved, and I don't know why, but she saved I don't know if it was a school thing, for school or if it was just, for her own records, but it was one of my relatives. I'm not going to say who, in the 60s had injury from these, twice. And she marked it down on here from, I'd have to have it in front of me right now. I don't remember. It was two of the big dogs, right? Like the big players, the ones that have been around for years from those. And he had some severe reactions. She didn't write down what the reactions were. She just wrote it down and the year. And I was like, thank you, Grandma. I mean, like, when you dig into your past, sometimes it helps you on your future journey. So that really assisted me. There was a lot of things that helped me connect the dots with these things. I mean, looking at the inserts themselves and then Googling those things, and just having, a soul knowing, I mean, that's a big part of it too, obviously. And then just living through your own experiences. So let's see here. was basically the gist of what I wanted to talk to you guys about, like the medical stuff. I always like to leave things on a positive note and talk about like some woo-woo or cool things. So I saw a spiritual lady on I'm not going to say her name. I saw her on Instagram the other day make this post about how if we were to travel back to the late 1800s, like if we were to time travel back to the late 1800s, they would not see us as we are now. They would see us as like these spectral lights and stuff because we vibe at such a different frequency than it was back then. It was so much more dense. It was so much more dense. And I actually had a dream that coincided with this, which I thought was really interesting. My dreams have always been all over the place. I've kept a dream journal since I was 12. I get messages in dreams. They're prophetic sometimes. I astral travel, like all the things. So anyway, I had this dream that I was training. It was like I was a warrior training, but I was using energy work. And I was up against this samurai, and I was told in the dream, don't worry, just, do what you got to do to defend yourself or whatever. This guy can't hurt you. He can't hurt you because you've gone back in time and he can hardly even see you. Like you're battling. It's like no contest is basically what was told to me. And it really coincided with what she had said on Instagram the other day. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So, if you're into any of that kind of stuff, I just thought it was interesting. I had another thing. This was just like, this is a trigger that came up for me the other day, but in all honesty, I've been holding on to this truth for a couple years. It's just my perspective is all. So I always see these memes about Jenny from Jenny and Forrest Gump. It's usually men that feel jaded or hurt by women that post them. And I get it. We've all been hurt in this life by men and women, um, but they're always like, downing her. And and from her perspective, in her defense, Jenny was raped by her father. Okay, so that's trauma that takes years and years to get over, if ever. It's hard for you to figure out how to love another person, yet alone love yourself. The bigger picture here, I believe, is that she was a lifelong friend to Forrest. Half of the things that Forrest did, he did because of her. If they would have gotten married early on, he would have been miserable because she would have been out there trying to find herself, going off, running, escaping her feelings, trying to find herself, potentially doing drugs and cheating on him and stuff. He would have been miserable. I mean, he lived this extraordinary life full of lessons and love. And, part of the reason was his friendship with her. She was one of the only people, it makes me teary-eyed, that saw him. And she knew it was not in her capacity to love him the way he wanted to be loved at the time. She didn't have it in her. She knew that she cared for him enough to be like, I got to go my own way. That is a form of that is a form of respect. Did she make the best decisions? No, probably not. She didn't make the best decisions. She was full of trauma and didn't know how to handle it. Right. But at the end, she ultimately gave him one of the best gifts that you can give another person, or you can give a man. She gave him a child. She was trying to figure her shit out, and she did come back to him. And yeah, she died. She died peacefully with him. And she knew that he would be there for her because that's who he was. She wasn't as pure-hearted or had the support that he had. She had a lot of, a trauma, a lot of damage. I just feel like this is important to discuss because until we start getting to the root of why people do what they do, why they are the way they are, not excuses, but just discussions. Once you start, realizing, why people are the way they are and why they do what they do, it takes the load off you. You can stop wondering and worrying, like, well, what's wrong with me? Maybe it has nothing to do with you. You know, it's all about them and where they're at, how they function, how they think, what they've got going on in their own lives. And then we can focus on ourselves and take care of ourselves. I just think it's important. It's important topics to discuss, for further whatever. But I've always loved Forrest Gump. I mean, like, it's a heart, it's a heart story. It's such a beautiful story. And then he has a son and a legacy to pass everything on to. How beautiful is that? Like, that's it. That's how it was supposed to be. And I know I'm all over on this video, but it's okay, So, I had one last thing. So it's come into my awareness quite frequently in the past couple years. How our thoughts affect us. Sometimes they're not even our thoughts; they're the thoughts of the people around us. If you're empathic, you just pick up on stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? It's also like, all the reels that you watch, information that you listen to and stuff that will affect you, and it'll affect, the thoughts that you have and things. Um, it's easy to get down in the dumps sometimes, or when things aren't going well. It all serves a purpose, but life can be hard. Life can be extremely hard. And in those times of doubt or worry, I've found it very helpful to, almost like in Harry Potter, do a Patronus, I can't even say it right, Patronus charm. If you're not familiar with Harry Potter, in Harry Potter, the Patronus charm is when they conjure up this spirit animal of light, full of hope and happiness from memories in their past. Um, Doing this can significantly lift your mood. It can literally shift your mind frame in a matter of minutes if you let it. A smile will creep up on your face, remembering some of these old memories, and it can get you out of funks. It can help you move you through things and help change your trajectory. The same thing with Sound of Music. I used to watch it with my grandma. She used to have me sing all the songs. She was a light. She was a beautiful light. And when they're laying in the bed and the kids are scared of the I'm sorry, my feet are okay. She was helping the kids that were scared of the thunderstorm. And she literally sat there and sang that song, Raindrops on Roses, Whiskers on Kittens, things that make her feel happy. This actually works. It really works. Go back in time in your head to things that made you feel incredible, that are just beautiful, that made your heart glow. I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking about it. The birth of your children, when you um, experienced just pure joy, when you had pure elation, that concert that you went to or that you've always wanted to go to, or I don't know if you're an adrenaline junkie, when you jumped out of that plane and you finally did it, or you had the courage to speak up to that person, opening presents with your family when you were a child, you know, when you bought your favorite pet, whatever it is, like, I just want to reiterate on the fact that um, the momentary times that we have of, doubt and worry, frustration, depression, all of those things that feel like they're taking us under sometimes. Um, just don't get stuck there. Like this is just a really cool tool to use. Um, along with moving your body, shaking it out, going for a walk, changing your location can do it a lot. Just going into a different room that you don't normally go into, going on a walk in a different location. Um, it's just important, to help keep the vibes high, to remember, our light and our love and our hearts. And, I just think it's very important. And that's been a trick, that I've used. I'll have memories pop in my head of just different random memories from when I was a kid. I used to go to this library with my mom back when we lived in Missouri. One of the places that we lived in Missouri, we lived in multiple places, and she used to go to the library so she could go to some AA meetings, and I would go into it was a giant library, and I had found this rose gold bracelet. It was beautiful. I was like in third grade or something, and I didn't turn it in or anything like that. I mean, maybe I should have. I don't even think I told my mom about the bracelet, but I found it. It was gorgeous. It actually had a rose on it, with some little leaves, and and it was just it was beautiful to me. It was something that I found. It was treasure, and I held on to it for years. I don't have it now, unfortunately. I don't know what happened to it, but um, I felt like I was alone a lot when I was a kid. So having little moments of I don't know, like finding cool little things, or, researching things that, you found interesting. I used to like to study, nature and like bugs and snakes and frogs, and, go creeking and go for hikes. And I still do that, it just literally slips me into basically a portal of bliss because nature surrounds us and we're part of Mother Nature. Um, she's in my heart. So we take care of ourselves. We take care of Mother Nature, it's very important. So anyway, I just wanted to say hello today, say a few things, and wish you all well. I will see you next time. Take care.